Um, any questions before we get started? Anything in your minds? Okay, we are moving along with our study of future interests, and we are coming close to the middle of the topic, if that's any consolation. Rather than doing a poll question today, what I'd like to do is go through our table one more time. We'll be expanding upon this table today, but at least I want to make sure everyone understands how to fill this in. This should become fluent for you. So we're going to spend a lot less time in it today than we did in the last class. All right. So let's try it like this. Who's next? I saw you earlier, didn't I? Okay. All right. How would I convey a fee simple? What language would I use? What's the language you need to convey a fee simple? Perfect. Exactly right. To A and his heirs. And I don't need to fill in the other columns here. You know what the answer is there, right? A fee simple is to A and his heirs. Okay, who's next? To me or? Okay. All right. If I want to convey a life estate, what words, what language would I use? Okay, we can do either. Say the second one, I think you trailed off. Okay, so we can say to A for life, then to B and his heirs, or we could also say just to A for life. Now, Elisa, what's the difference between these first two that Samia gave a minute ago? That's always true. But what are the future interests for these two? What are the future interests? What is the remainder for this first? What is the future interest for this first one? No. What is the future interest for this first one? What do we call that? No, it's actually not the A's heirs. With a life estate, this first one she gave, what is the future interest there? What do we call that? No. Remainder in fee simple, exactly. Okay? This is what's called a remainder in fee simple. All right? Remainder in fee simple. Haley, why is this a remainder?
It goes to a third party.
That's right. When you have a life estate that terminates naturally, right, the interest that follows is called a remainder if it goes to a third party. Now, Allison, what do you call the future interest for this one?
Reversion.
Very good. Just fill in blank. Reversion. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, reversion, fee simple. That's exactly right. Today, we're going to expand upon different kinds of remainders. We'll do that a little bit later. So later in class, I'm going to expand upon this chart a bit, but I'm not going to get there quite yet. All right. The next interest I want to describe is what's called a fee simple determinable. So I'll give you an example. From O to school, so long as Blackacre is used for school purposes, right? From O to school, so long as Blackacre is used for school purposes. Kelsey, why is this a fee simple determinable?
Because there's an option. No, not an option. That's the wrong word. There's the event that would cause it to go back in a possibility of remainder.
But why? You gave me my next question already. But why is this a fee simple determinable? What about this tells you that we're dealing with a fee simple determinable here?
There's a condition.
Well, are all conditions fee simple determinables?
No, there's.
You're right.
There's
but
like a word.
and what are those words?
Oh, the duration word.
Okay, very good. And what's a durational word here?
So long as.
That's exactly right. The key phrase here is so long as. It's what's called a conditional word. I'm sorry, durational word. Jumped myself ahead of myself. A durational word. So long as, during, until, while, right? When you see these words, you should be thinking fee simple determinable. All right? But specifically, right? Specifically, Yancy, who has the future interest in this question? Okay, and what do we call that? Okay, very good. Very. If you finish it, very good. Okay. O has a possibility of reverter in fee simple. Okay. You're going to need to memorize these pairings. When you know that the present interest is a fee simple determinable, you have to know that the future interest is a possibility of reverter. Do not say possibility of reversion. You're going to want to say it. Don't say it. Please, just don't say it. It's not a thing. Okay? Possibility of, oh, I said revert. What the heck am I? That's not even a thing at all. That's definitely not a thing. Reverter in fee simple. No one corrected me yet. That was good. Possibility of reverter. Very good. Okay. Everyone with me? All right, let's move on. I think Bryce is next. So Bryce, I'll give you this example, right? I'll tell you that from O to school, but if Blackacre is used for, is used for residential purposes, O has a right to re-enter. Okay? Now, practically speaking, these two are the same, right? They're both requiring O to be used for school purposes, but they're framed in a slightly different fashion, right? So Bryce, what do we call the second one? What's that called?
Fee simple subject to condition subsequent.
And why do you know that this is a fee simple subject to a condition subsequent? What tells you that?
Words like but if,
Very good.
however.
Right. These are what we call conditional words. But if, however, provided that, right? When you see these words that sound like if, then, these sorts of things, you have to start thinking about a fee simple subject to the condition subsequent. Now, look at this phrase, fee simple subject to a condition subsequent. Chris, what is a condition subsequent?
Is the right of re-entry for
No, in general, what does the phrase condition subsequent mean? What does the word subsequent mean?
after,
Subsequent means after. So what's a condition subsequent?
whatever happens after.
Okay.
Or a condition that could happen.
That's exactly, yeah. A condition subsequent is a condition that happens after. And just take a look at this grammar, right? From O to school, comma. But if, right? The but if comes after O gets it, right? O has it, he's doing great. Comma. But if, he can lose it. Later in class, we'll do what's called a condition precedent. With a condition precedent, the condition comes before the person gets it. It's usually before the comma, in fact. We'll pay attention to that later. But at least here, you have a comma, and then you have the condition after it. Everyone with me? All right, Doug, what do you call the future interest with the fee simple subject to condition subsequent?
The right of entry,
Okay,
fee simple.
okay, there you got it. Okay. I'll just simplify your chart for now, call it the right of entry, but you can also see it as right of re-entry or even power of termination. You call it a lot of different things, synonymous. Okay? Now, Doug, finish it up. What's significant about the right of entry? Why is that different than the possibility reverter?
So it's not automatic.
That's correct. It's not automatic. What does that mean, it's not automatic?
The future interest for whatever is going to occur with the future interest does not occur until something is done by that person.
What's that something that has to be done? What has to be done for the right of entry?
They have to
What do you think has to be done? You're in law school. What are you doing to do something? Where do you do anything?
They have to go and file something in court.
Go to court. Yeah, exactly right. The right of entry requires you going to court. You don't have much more than that. Sufficiently, you have to go to court and assert your claim, right? Dylan, do you have to have any legal action taken with a possibly reverter?
No, because it's on.
There you go. The possibility of revert is automatic. As soon as the condition's violated, the estate is cut short. Okay, everyone with me? All right. Now, with both the fee simple determinable and the fee simple subject to condition subsequent, the third party, with both of these two, the future interest belongs to the grantor, O. I'll say it again. With both of these two, the fee simple determinable and the fee simple subject to condition subsequent, the future interest belongs to O, the grantor. Okay. Make sure you pay very careful attention. If you have one of these sorts of statements and the future interest goes to a third party, Alan, what kind of estate are we dealing with if it goes to a third party? Very good. Right? If the future interest belongs to a third party, okay? If the future interest belongs to a third party, we're dealing with a fee simple subject to executory interest. And I'll give you two examples to just show you how I can trick you on this one, right? From O to school, but if Blackacre is used for residential purposes, I can't type today, to B. Now, if you're just looking at this quick and say, oh, wait a minute, Josh, I got this, right? But if, I'm done, right? Fee simple subject to condition subsequent, I'm done, right? Wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Wrong. You have to pay close attention where the third party, where the future interest is going. Here the future interest goes to B. It's not to A, it's to B. Everyone with me? It's to B. Therefore, this has to be a fee simple subject to an executory interest. And then you might say, wait a minute, Josh. Oh, but if, that means it's not automatic. No, my friends. These are automatic. Cut short automatically. When you have a statement like this, it's cut short as soon as the condition is violated. There's no requirement to go to court. This is not a right of entry. It's not. Sorry. Jayla, what do we call the future interest that matches with a fee simple subject and executory interest? What do you call that future interest? Executory interest, yeah, just drop future. You're right, okay? It's called an executory interest, and in this case, it's an executory interest in fee simple, okay? That's an easy one, right? You have a fee simple subject to executory interest, and the future interest is called an executory interest. It cuts it short automatically, right? I can also do it like this. I can go from O to school, so long as Blackacre is used for school purposes, then to B. That's perfectly fine. You see what I did there, right? So long as. These are the words that make you think, oh, wait a minute, that's the fee simple determinable. But you have to keep reading. You have to go to the comma and see then it goes to the B. When you do these questions, you have to go to the end of the sentence. You have to read to the end of the sentence. You can't just stop and say, oh, I'm done. I'm finished, right? You have to go all the way to the end. But in either case, the future interest is the same. It's an executory interest in fee simple. Okay. That's review. I've not done anything new. That's just what we did last week. Questions on that chart? Yes, Clayton.
In my notes for the future interest, fee simple subject to executory interest / limitation, I have one that says B has executory interest without in fee simple. Is that possible to say that, or should I always have in fee simple?
Well, in this case, it's in fee simple, but you can have I could do this. Right? I could do this. Then to be for life. You can do that. I'm not going to do that here, but you can do that. In that case, it'd be an executor interest in life estate. You can. It depends on what the given question is. In this case, it's fee simple. When you don't say anything, it's fee simple. Make sense? But good question. Yes, Blake?
Another way to think about it, to put this into fee simple subject to executor interest, it is the comma, the fact that it's going to a third party.
Yes. Yeah, the commas are very important, and the placement of the commas are quite deliberate. I'll try as best as I can to always do the commas right in class, but they're very important. Yes, sir, Tim.
That example that you had for play when it was then to be for life.
Yeah.
If both conditions were no longer met, would it go to O?
Yeah. Oh, whatever version.
Okay.
You can get really creative with these, and when you get creative, they become very dangerous because they can bounce back. We'll do some example, like the funeral example. We'll do one about a funeral. That gets really messy. That one today. Okay. All right. The reading in this chapter may seem like duplicative, and I think it largely is. This is mostly a review class. There's really two small things that are new, the different types of remainders, but this is mostly about review. All right. Let's do some examples in your book. So go to 315. Okay. All right. And this becomes very, very basic. Okay. Example 1 at the bottom of the page. It says O conveys black acre to A for life. O as reversion and fee simple. Okay. Nothing complicated there. It goes back to O after A's death. Okay. Let's try example number 2. O conveys Whiteacre to A for life, then to B and her heirs if B survives A. So this one's trickier, right? Yeah, I thought so. That's right. So Tony, let's look at this one. This one's a little bit trickier, right? To A for life, then to B and her heirs if B survives A. Why is this one a little bit trickier than what we've seen before? What's kind of weird about this one?
It's got the extra third party, I guess.
If. Yeah. Is it certain that B will ever get black or Whiteacre in this case? Why is it not certain that B will ever get Whiteacre?
Because A could outlive B.
Yeah. Right, so if B dies before A, B's heirs get nothing. But if A dies first, right, B then gets it. Right, so what you see here is that we would say that O has a reversion. Right? He might get the reversion. He might not get the reversion. Okay? So let's see that. What you're starting to see with these questions is reversions aren't always certain to happen. Remainders are not always certain to happen. Right? This is what you call a reversion that's not certain to happen. Right? Might happen, might not happen. Do not call this a possibility of reversion. Someone's going to say that it's not a possibility of reversion. But this reversion that may happen, or maybe you cut short. Okay? All right. Go to page 316. There are a bunch of review questions. Heather, you want to read 1A, please?
O conveys to A for life, then to B for heirs.
Okay, so stop right there. What are the present and future interests in this question?
So A has a life estate.
Very good.
And then B has a remainder in fee simple.
Perfect. Okay. This is exactly right what we've done before. Is there any interest for O here? That's correct. O has no interest. All right. Let's skip B. That involves a fee tail, which I'm not so concerned about. Clayton, you want to read number C, please, or letter C?
O conveys to A for life, then to B and her heirs, if B attains the age of 21 before A dies. At the time of the conveyance, B is 15 years old. If there is a reversion, what happens to it if B reaches 21 during A's life?
Okay, so let's walk through this one, right? O conveys to A for life, then to B and her heirs. Okay. If B attains the age of 21 before A dies. Okay? And they tell us that B is 15 years old. Clayton, is there any guarantee that B lives another 6 years?
No, sir.
No. Is there any guarantee that A lives another day?
No, sir.
Okay. So how would you characterize B's interest here? Just talk it through. You don't have to use exact labels, but just talk it through here. Well, if it just said Clayton, from O to A for life, then to B and her heirs, period, what would that be?
It would basically be the same as A.
Right. Which one? What was that a minute ago? What do we call that?
The life estate and then a reverter.
No.
No reversion.
No.
No, I'm wrong.
What follows a life estate to a third party? What do you call that? Just a minute ago we said it.
Remainder?
Okay, it's a remainder. But is this remainder certain to happen?
No.
Okay. What we're starting to experience here is that things don't always fall into place. And what we'll cover today is that not all remainders are certain to happen. Okay? There are going to be two categories of remainders we'll talk about. Right? There'll be two categories of remainders we want to talk about. The first category of remainder is what's called a vested remainder. A vested remainder. Okay? The second category is what's called a contingent remainder. A contingent remainder. Okay? There are specific rules for these, but I want to explain at a high level what's going on before I get to the specific rules. All right? A remainder can only be one or the other. If it's vested, it's not contingent. If it's contingent, it's not vested. They're like two sides of a coin. They can't be in the middle, right? They're either one or the other, which is good, right? If you can prove that a remainder is contingent, you know it's not vested. And if you can prove it's vested, you know it's not contingent. Okay. Why is it important to distinguish a contingent remainder from a vested remainder? Because at common law, you could assign, you could sell a vested remainder. Right? At common law, you could sell a vested remainder. Why? The vested remainders were certain. They were a sure bet, right? They were fixed. There was no ambiguity they were going to happen. You could sell a vested remainder at common law. But at common law, you could not sell the contingent remainder. At common law, you could not sell the contingent remainder. Why? Because they were variable. They were not certain to happen. Right? Today, you can sell either one. It doesn't matter. And in fact, in some jurisdictions, they've abolished contingent remainders. But, my friend, the common law rules you have to know. So that sucks, but you have to know them. Okay? Everyone with me? Okay. There are two rules you have to remember. Both of them have to be true. Again, in order to have a vested remainder, two things have to be true. Okay? And let me make another note for your outlines. The rules for remainders are the same as they were before, right? What is a remainder? After a life estate, the interest goes to a third party. That's why I actually saw it dropping on my phone after it dropped because it's a few second delay. It's kind of creepy, right? Right? We always understand that a life estate ends, and where the interest goes to a third party, we call that a remainder. Now let me just give you a slight caveat to that. It doesn't have to be a life estate. What if I said from O to A for 20 years? From O to A for 20 years. Then to B and his heirs. Right? I'll give right here, right? Try it like this. From O to A for 20 years, then to B and his heirs. Tim, what is B's interest here in this example?
Well, A and the heirs have a estate that lasts 20 years.
You call it a term of years. Yeah, exactly. Don't even worry about that one too much. But what's the future interest here? What do you call B's interest here? Don't fight it.
Well, I guess as you said, the remainder doesn't have to follow life estate.
It's a remainder. Is there any doubt what happens in 20 years?
No doubt.
No. You say here that also B has remainder in fee simple. Okay? A's interest is called a term of years, and don't kill yourself with that right now. You have enough to learn. But the key point here is it ends naturally. 20 years ends naturally. A life ends naturally. There's no condition, right? It's not like you're using a property for another purpose or if you're violating some term. People die. It's natural, right? 20 years runs up, that's it, right? Terms finish naturally. And both cases, B has a remainder in fee simple. Okay, everyone with me? All right. So when you get to deciding when you have vested or contingent remainders, you always have to decide first, are we having a remainder here? Right? Is this a remainder? And once you know it's a remainder, you have to characterize what kind of remainder it is. Let me say that one more time. What makes this topic so complicated is it's layered. Before you can decide if it's a contingent or vested remainder, you first have to decide, is this a remainder? Right? It's almost like a hierarchy. Say, okay, the present interest is a life estate, so the future interest is a remainder. Okay, good. What kind of remainder? Is it vested or contingent? Right? You have to go sequencing one at a time. And you remember, like in math in high school, you have to show your work. Right? You can't just up as aha, contingent remainder. You have to do each step to show me you know what you're talking about. Right? Okay. So there are two conditions that have to be satisfied for a remainder to be vested. The first, it has to be given to an ascertained person. And second, it's not subject to a condition precedent. I'm going to explain both of those, don't worry, in great detail. But just write those down in your notes for now. The first condition is that it has to be given to an ascertained person. And the second condition is it has to be not subject to a condition precedent. Both of those have to be true. Let's say it's given to an ascertained person, but it is subject to condition precedent. It goes down to contingent remainder. Again, if number one is satisfied and number two is not, it's not vested, it's contingent. If number two is satisfied, but number one is not, it's contingent. Again, it's a lot easier if you have to guess, just guess contingent, right? Because it's more likely to be true, right? But if you're uncertain, you have to go through each of those. Now, here's what's going to happen in about 10 minutes. You're going to forget these two things. You say, well, Josh, I know what that means. A vested remainder is certain to occur. If you do that, you're being lazy. I know you're going to do it because you will. You have to remember these two items. You cannot escape them. If you try and take a shortcut, you're going to get the question wrong. Okay? All right, now let me actually tell you what the hell what does ascertained mean, okay? It's a word that you don't really use, but generally, the word ascertained means someone who's named, right? You know their names, A or B or C, or the child of A or the child of B, right? These are people that we can identify. Josh, Mary, Tom, Sue, right? You know their names. There's no doubt about who they are. All right? Now, what if I said Josh's heirs? Mackenzie, answer carefully. Are Josh's heirs ascertained? They are.
Oh,
Should I know something? Is something I should be aware of?
No.
Am I okay? Maybe am I not feeling so well? That corona spread to Texas? No, I mean, what's... Oh, boy. By the way, just in the event we have an epidemic, I can do online classes easily enough. Mostly joking, but like, I can just talk to the camera. Yeah. Mostly joking. Yeah. So are my heirs ascertained? Why not? Thank you. God, this didn't answer carefully. Yeah, I'm alive. Thank God. I'm here. I'm breathing loud and clear. Right? A person's heirs are not ascertained till they're dead. So if I said to Josh's heirs, that person is not ascertained. That's not an ascertained person, right? Right? If a person has no children, and you say the children of A, those heirs are not ascertained, right? Maybe they'll have kids later, maybe they won't. Yes, Ajay.
And that includes if there are heirs named in the will.
Well, if you name a person, that person is ascertained. The question I gave Mackenzie is Josh's heirs, period.
Yeah.
Right? If I said to Josh's daughter X, right? That's a named person, that's ascertained, right? That's not the same way as saying Josh's heirs. Good? All right. So the ascertained one people usually are okay with. That's a little bit easier. The second one, people start getting very iffy over. Because this word condition precedent, it's like, uh-oh, what the hell is that, Josh, right? Well, let me tell you, we did before condition subsequent. Remember I told you condition comes after the comma. The condition precedent is different, right? Okay? And I want to give you two examples side by side. Okay. From O to A, but if A fails, to use Blackacre as a school, then O has a right to re-enter. Okay, that's the same example we used 20 minutes ago, right? This is what we call a fee simple subject to a condition subsequent. Why is it condition subsequent? Because the condition comes after the comma. From O to A, comma. But if A fails fails to use as a school. Okay? Everyone with me? All right. I'm going to modify. I'll give you a second hypothetical. So it goes like this. From O to A for life, comma. Okay, so there's a difference, right? From O to A for life. A is a life estate here. There's no question about that. Okay? Then to B, okay? Okay. Actually, let me give a better example. Okay, that's a bad example. Let me give a better example. Right, from O to A for life. Okay, but if B prepares A proper funeral. Okay. To B and his heirs. Okay. Oops. Sorry, that just jumped. Okay. Okay, everyone look at this one, right? From O to A for life, comma. But if B prepares A proper funeral to B and his heirs. Okay. So Allison, let's look at this one at a time, right? This is actually a very hard question that I want to spend some time on. Okay? So first off, what has to happen? Right? What has to happen here for B to get Blackacre? Good. Right, you can't give a funeral to a living person, right? That's generally not possible, right? So A has to die, and B has to give the proper funeral. So here, Allison, does a condition occur before or after B gets Blackacre? Louder? That's right. The condition here is before. A has it for life, there's no question about it. But B will have to do the funeral first before he gets Blackacre. The condition comes before he gets Blackacre, right? Here, A has it, and the condition comes after he gets it. But here, the condition comes before. And how do you know it? From O to A for life, but if B prepares, then comes the comma, right? Here's the important clause, to B and his heirs, right? That's what we're looking for when B gets his fee simple. The condition comes before the final comma. Let's do that more time. In this example, the important clause, B and his heirs, comes after the condition. The condition comes first. This is a condition precedent, right? This is what's called a condition precedent. And this is called a condition subsequent. I know this always tricks people up a little bit. One more time. 1 second. I'll probably answer your question. Okay? Here, A has it, right? A has his estate, but he could lose it, right? The condition comes after A gets it. In this one, A has a life estate, which will terminate naturally, right? B doesn't get it until he gives the funeral. That is, condition first, he gets the estate afterwards. Let's say he gives a crappy funeral. It's not proper. He gets nothing. Let's say he gives no funeral at all. He gets nothing. Someone always asks this. Let's say the body is like lost at sea and there's no funeral. He gets nothing. Right? The condition comes after. So we could characterize here B's interest as a contingent remainder. We could characterize it that way. Right? Why? B is ascertained, so the first one is check. But there is a condition precedent. There is a condition precedent. And because there is a condition precedent, this remainder cannot be vested. Now, I'm about to wrinkle this one even more. Did I answer your question? Okay. But that's the definition of a remainder, right? With a remainder, it's after the natural termination of the life estate, it goes to a third party. Right? Here, who has a future interest in this first question? And what do we call O? O is reversion, exactly, right? So I want you to understand Dylan's question. Like, wait a minute, Josh, they're different, right? Here are the conditions on A, and here are the conditions on the third party. It has to be that way, right? The definition of fee simple subject to condition subsequent is there is no third party, right? The future interest belongs to O, the grantor. But here, the definition of the future interest is a remainder because it follows a life estate. Involves a third party. Elias?
So you said O has a reversion,
In this one.
not a,
Oh no, I'm sorry. It's a possibly reverter. Yeah, in this one. Yeah, I mean, he said reversion. I'm sorry. That's not right, right? Oh, as a possibly reverter. That's right.
what about right of entry?
That's right. With the fee simple subject condition subsequent, it's a right of entry. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's okay. We're cool. Okay. Yeah.
So with the condition subsequent in that example, because it says from O to A, comma,
Yeah.
that means that A is not guaranteed the possession yet.
Well, A has it, right? Until the point when he stops using it for school purposes.
Okay, so
Right, he holds on to it for some period of time. Now, maybe the very first day he gets it, he converts it into a condo, but at least for some period of time he has it. But here, B will not get it until there's a funeral.
So my question was, from O to A for life, could you consider A acquiring the property in possession as a condition precedent? Also?
No, but A gets it with no strings attached. He has it for life. The condition here is on B, right? That's the important point. We're not characterizing A's interest. A is a life estate. There's no doubt about that. We're trying to say, what kind of remainder does B have? Does B have a vested remainder? Or does B have a remainder that's contingent? And we ask these two questions. Is B ascertained? Yes. Is there a condition precedent? Yes. So because there's a condition precedent, the remainder cannot be vested. This question, I have more on this question. I want to get over your questions first. Yeah, go on.
The idea of a contingent remainder, if excuse me, that contingency is not filled, does that mean O retains?
Don't say contingency not fulfilled. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to take a shortcut. Just ask these two questions. Is the party ascertained? And is there a condition precedent? Don't even ask, is it fulfilled? You're going to get yourself in trouble if you even ask that question.
My question was, does O retain anything with a condition precedent?
That's my next question. I will get there in a minute. In this one, this question is about to get messed up. If anyone knows where I'm going, you're going to see why. But your question is actually in the exact right track, but we'll get there in about a minute or two. Nick, is your hand up?
Yeah, so I'm going off of Dylan's question. If it was from O to A for life, but if O does not prepare A proper funeral to be in his heirs, then would that be an executory interest?
Oh, God, you stole my next question. You're really close. Yeah. That is actually this, by the way.
Okay.
But I'm not there yet. I want to understand why this is not a vested remainder, right? This cannot be a vested remainder. All right, so now I think, Tim, you're next. So, Tim, generally, how long after a person dies does it take to have a proper funeral?
Well, that's kind of what is proper.
Is it instant?
No, it's
Like you have to rent out the Staples Center? I mean, how do you have a proper funeral? What do you have to do? It took a month, right? I mean, what?
bury them in a box.
Is that enough? Beyonce singing? I mean, what do you have to do?
Proper is undefined.
But can it happen right away?
What do you mean right away? Within a day? Within a week?
Within a week? Within a month?
Sure.
So what about Tim? Who owns Blackacre in this question while the funeral is being prepared?
Oh.
Oh. Oh. And what do you call O's interest here? What do you call it after a life estate where it goes back to the grantor? No. What do you call the future interest after a life estate when it goes back to the grantor? So follow me here, guys. Right? This question is like one that like law professors love to ask about. I don't know why, but it's in every book. A dies. Where does Blackacre go when A dies? It cannot go to B right away. Why? There's not been a funeral yet. It might take a week, it might take a month, it might take a day, whatever it is, right? There's some period of time, right? There's some period of time when the funeral hasn't happened yet. Someone's got to hold on to Blackacre, right? Property cannot exist in a vacuum. Property can't just exist in nowhere, right? Someone's got to hold on to it. So O holds on to it for at least some period of time. We say O has reversion. But Nick, what happens to O's interest once a funeral is held?
Then it passes to B. If it was,
What does B do to O's interest? You said it.
B cuts it off.
It cuts it off, right? The second that B holds a proper funeral, O cuts short. I'm sorry. The second that B holds a funeral, O's interest is cut short. And what do you call that? I mean, it cuts short the interest of a third party. Executor interest. Whoa. I told you this would get messy, right? 1 second, Jay, I promise. So here, how do we characterize B's interests? Is it a contingent remainder? Or is it an executor interest because it's cutting short O's interest? I'll tell you, I go back and forth on this one, right? I think the better answer is it's an executor interest, right? I do. And I'll explain why in a minute. But at a minimum, right? At a minimum, we know it's not a vested remainder. Okay? Now, but I want to give you both of them. By the way, if you put this for an exam, I could probably go either way on it, right? I think I can see both answers. I go back and forth myself which one I think is better, but I want to explain both of them, right? So first off, okay, we know it's not a vested remainder in this example. It's definitely not vested. All right. Then we ask, what should we characterize it as? You could say contingent remainder because B is ascertained, but there is a condition precedent. I tend to think the better answer, though, is executor interest because B is cutting short O's interest. But you can see the exact same facts could, I think, reasonably give rise to two different answers. Isn't that amazing and painful? I'll give you another example in a minute. Ashley.
But wouldn't it only be an executor interest if he fulfilled the condition? I mean, so technically...
That's why it may never do it. He may never give the funeral.
Then how can you say that he's got it? You get what I'm saying?
Which is why I think you can go either way, right? Because an executor interest could exist. In theory, how long does B have to give the proper funeral? Until B dies. So until the day B dies, his executor interest is hanging over O. Isn't that something? Jay, was your hand up?
Yeah, this was tied to the question I was going to ask. It was between the word prepares and the word holds a funeral. Because I'm thinking, if I'm interpreting that term, all you have to do is prepare a funeral.
And actually have it.
Even if A's not even dying.
And that can do it at any point during B's natural life.
Yeah, so you could just prepare the funeral and then get the executor interest.
You could do that. Heather.
So that's kind of where my question is kind of going off of that. So if you put terms in here like this, like prepares a proper funeral, like do you not have to define them? And they can just be like, oh, well, in my opinion, a proper funeral is, you know, taking a picture of them to a tree and saying like...
Put a little teddy bear there. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, look, what you're saying is a very good point. Courts have to decide what a proper funeral is, right? I mentioned that I was joking with the Kobe Bryant thing, but like that's a funeral. I mean, that's that's a funeral. Michael Jordan's crying. That's a funeral. But yeah, there's litigation over what that actually means. But I want you to I give this example early on to not mess with you, but to explain how the exact same sentence could be, I think, construed different ways. I think here executor interest is probably the better answer. I think it is. But I can see how you would put contingent remainder instead. Let me give you another example. Okay, so from O to A for life, comma, then to the heirs of B, and I tell you that B is alive. All right, from O to A for life, comma, then to the heirs of B, and I tell you that B is alive. Who's next? Where am I? I guess, yeah, okay, okay, Sarah. So, sort of easy. We know that A has a life estate, right? What does B have in this example?
I do not want to say.
Well, generally, let's start with what we know. What do you usually call the interest that follows naturally after the conclusion of a life estate? Okay, so we can start by saying, does B, or do the heirs of B have remainder, right? That's our first question. And just explain why. You have to have an angle of attack, right? You have to have a general method to attack these questions. When you see from O to A for life, comma, your first instinct should be we have a remainder of some kind. It might be, it might not be, but at least you start saying, okay, this might be a remainder. So Sarah, what are the two kinds of remainders we have? Okay, so that's your question. Okay, from O to A for life, comma, then to the heirs of B. Okay, that means maybe we have a remainder. Could be vested or can be contingent. All right. So Jasmine, what are the two questions we have to ask ourselves to determine if a remainder is vested or contingent?
So if the person is ascertained or named, and then if there's not subject to the condition precedent.
Okay, very good. So let's go through our two conditions, or two rules here, right? Do we have are the heirs of B ascertained?
No.
Why?
Because B is still alive.
B is still alive. B's heirs are not determined until B dies. Right? B's heirs are not determined until B dies. So we don't have to go to the second one. We're done, right? I mean, there's not a condition precedent here in any event. So we're just done. We do number one. So our guess now is, okay, this is probably a contingent remainder. Okay? But we don't stop there, right? In other words, you can't just say, aha, check, not ascertained, I'm done. You have to keep going. So Catherine, let's just think about this question now in the abstract. What happens when A dies and B is still alive? What do we call that? Exactly. O has reversion. O has reversion for that period after A dies, but before B dies. It might be a day, it might be a year, it might be a decade, right? We don't know. For some period, okay, for some period, O might have it. Now, Monique, what happens if the day after this conveyance is drafted, B dies? He dies the very next day. Can B's heirs inherit it immediately upon A's death? No, I told you, B's dead. No. The day after this instrument's written, right, B dies. B's heirs are determined. And then a couple years later, A dies. What happens then? Does O ever hold it? No. That's correct. Okay. In the example I gave here, it's possible for B's heirs to inherit immediately upon A's death, right? If B dies first, There's no gap, right? There's no gap period where O holds reversion. It might not happen. All right, so let's take this another angle. So Chelsea, what would you call it if O has it for some period, he has reversion, and then B dies? Then his heirs show up. They say, hi, I'm an heir. Get lost, right? What do you call that? What would you call it if B's heirs show up and kick out O? What do you call it when you cut the interest of a third party short? What's that called? No. What's an executor interest? Okay, very good. So if O has a reversion, all right, so Kinza, if O has a reversion, right, and B's heirs show up and cut short, we call that an executor interest, right? What happens if O never gets it? If B dies first and the heirs show up immediately upon A's death for land, what would they have then? What's that called?
Wait, sorry. So O never gets it.
O never gets it. Goes right from A dies, goes to B's heirs. What do you call that?
Remainder.
What kind of remainder? Only two types so far, at least.
Would it be a vested?
No.
No, contingent.
What is a contingent? I'm not letting you off that easy. What's a contingent remainder?
It's when. Can I explain what a vested is? And then.
Sure.
So vested is when they're ascertained, or it's not subject to a conditional precedent.
Okay. So why is this one contingent?
Well, they are ascertained because B died.
Well, in the hypothetical I gave you, I told you B died. But when this instrument was drafted, was B still alive?
Yes.
So they ascertained.
No.
Okay. So what kind of remainder is this?
So it is a contingent.
Okay. So again, we have a situation where the exact same facts can give rise to two different fact patterns, right? Chelsea told us it could be an executor interest, right? Because B's heirs could cut short O's interest. Kinza tells us B's heirs might have a contingent remainder if B dies first, right? Everyone see the exact same facts, I think, can be read two different ways. I'll tell you which one I think is the better answer in a minute, but I want you to see, everyone sees two different ways you can read it. Yes, Doug?
So, the status of whether the heirs are ascertained or not is only dependent on the moment when it was drafted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's right. Your heirs are only calculated at someone's death. If B is alive when this is drafted, they're not ascertained. If B was already dead, there'd be no problem. You know who their heirs are. Okay, now, Josh, which is the right answer? Okay. With the funeral example, it's impossible to give a funeral right away, right? There's zero chance in heaven or hell, indeed, that a funeral can be held right away. It just cannot happen. It's not possible. There's going to be some gap where O has it. So I think their executor interest is the better answer, because O is always going to have his interest cut short. But with this one, it's possible that the heirs of B can take it immediately upon death, right? There's a very good chance O never gets it. So if you had to ask me, like on a, what's the better answer? I would say contingent remainder here. I would understand if you put executor interest. I don't think it's wrong. But you're asking me what I think the better answer is. I think the better answer is contingent remainder here. What you should be seeing right now is that in almost every case, a contingent remainder can also be characterized as an executor interest. Right? Not always. There are going to be examples where it's not true. But in many cases, you're going to see that a contingent remainder and an executor interest are real similar. Yes, Dana?
So I'm taking them that they're both automatic.
Yeah. Yes, no, that's right. Yeah, I had to think about that for a second, but you're right. Yeah, they're both automatic. Yeah, right. Again, you'll see again in this class that if you have a vest remainder, it's set, right? There's no doubt about it, right? It's going to happen. It's ascertained. There's no condition precedent. You're good. But once you throw a condition precedent into the mix, or once you throw an unascertained person into the mix, it screws things up. Because someone's going to get screwed, right? O might get screwed, or the heirs might get screwed. But there's so much variability they can characterize it two different ways. Okay. Now, why is the law so uncomfortable with unascertained people? Because they may not ever exist, right? If I say I want to leave it to my sons, Sally and Tom, right? Whatever, right? Those are people the law can track down. But if you write to the heirs of B, that means the courts have tracked down a bunch of unnamed people who might be related. They don't like these sorts of broad conveyances that are very hard to enforce. And that's why they make them a lot harder to inherit. Yes, sir, Dylan?
It said to be sons.
That's my next example. I'm getting there in 2 minutes.
Okay.
That's my very next topic, I promise. I promise that's my next topic I'm getting to. Everyone get these 3 examples. Right? Again, you're going to have an exam question on this, where you're going to say, oh man, Josh, is that a contingent remainder? Is that an executor interest? Right? There probably is going to be a better answer, but if you show your work, you get most of the credit. Right? I'm not going to mark it wrong if you show me the work, but you have to explain why you think it's contingent or executor interest. If you just say, oh, one or the other, I can't read your mind. Right? If you get the wrong one, that's too bad. So you have to show me your work. Spell out why you think it is. Oh, because it cut short owes reversion, and it's okay, that's good for executor interest. Okay. Everyone with me? All right. So go to page 320, please. Okay. All right, so far we've done vested remainders and contingent remainders. Vested remainders and contingent remainders. There's a special kind of vested remainder that you have to be familiar with. Okay? And that's what's called, I'll put up here, the vested remainder subject to open. The vested remainder subject to open. Now again, I want you to put this in your notes right under vested remainder because it's a type of vested remainder. The rules are the same. You ask yourself, is this party ascertained? And is there a condition precedent? Okay. The only way you get to have a subject to open is if both of these are true, plus additional facts. Okay. You cannot have a contingent remainder subject to open. That's not a thing, right? You only have subject to open when you have a vested remainder. So consider an example. Okay? This is Dylan's, your question from 2 minutes ago. From O to A for life, then to A's children. Okay? From O to A for life, then to A's children. So I tell you first, A has no children. All right. Who am I up to? Mike. From O to A for life, then to A's children. So let's start off. A is life estate. What do we presume then that the future interest is in this question? From O to A for life, comma, then to A's children. What do we presume that the future interest is? Generally, what's the future interest that follows a life estate that goes to a third party called?
Executor interest?
Not even close. Joitza?
Remainder in fee simple?
Yeah. Why do we think it's remainder fee simple as a general matter?
Since it says to A's children.
Okay. Generally, when you have a life estate followed by future interest, it's remainder. Now we ask ourselves, what kind of remainder is this? Is this a vested remainder or a contingent remainder? In this example I gave you here.
It's contingent. Yeah.
Tell me why.
Because they're unascertained.
Who's not ascertained?
A's children.
Okay, good. I've told you in this question that it has no children. Now, Joitza, this is going to sound really dumb, but when A dies, can you have any more children? Well, actually, technically you can. So assuming A is a guy, in theory, you have to wait 9 months after his death. Don't laugh, right? You can impregnate a person on your deathbed. It happens, right? Property involves these really bizarre hypotheticals where anyone can impregnate anyone at any time. It's very promiscuous. The entire topic is very whatever. But you can presume that at death, plus 9 months, you can no longer have kids. Right? You actually, for women, it's a little bit tougher to give birth after. But for men, you can at least, what?
Sperm and frozen egg.
I know someone asked about that. That doesn't count for common law stuff, okay? There's no, the common law 9-month rule doesn't apply for frozen embryos. That can last indefinitely. Okay. But just stick with me for common law here. We'll get to the in vitro stuff later in the semester, okay? Promise. We'll do that later this term, okay? But I tell you here, A has no children. Therefore, A's kids are not ascertained. So this must be a contingent remainder. Yes, Dana.
What if you're unaware of the children?
What do you mean unaware?
Like, you didn't know you had children.
Generally, whether a person has children is a fact. It's not something subject to debate. I mean, I guess you have paternity testing, but I'm not sure. What do you mean you don't know?
Talking about wild oats.
Oh, unknown kids? Look, if they exist, they exist. It doesn't matter if you know about them. If they exist, they're kids. Yeah. Yeah, Tim.
Since the determinant's contingent is in war, do you sometimes want us to also mention it's contingent upon the birth of a child?
Don't say contingent upon. Don't do that.
I meant condition or subject to.
There is no condition precedent here. This is basically they're not ascertained. That you stop there. I see what you're trying to do. Don't use the word contingent, right? Just don't say it's contingent upon this. If someone says it's contingent upon filling, just don't do it. You'll lose it. Okay? Now let me give a second hypothetical. A has one child, B, right? And this is the example on page 320 in your book. Right? A is a child named B. All right, Nancy. So let's go through our routine again. The life estate, followed by remainder. This remainder vested or contingent? Ask what are 2 questions. Yep, just go back to your 2 rules. That's exactly what you're supposed to do.
So he's ascertained,
Well, who's ascertained?
the child B.
Well, but it says A's children, which means one or more, and only one child is named. Is that ascertained? Are A's children ascertained?
Do you have to get that technical and put RE in parentheses? Like for a single child to be ascertained?
I gave you the questions in the book. I'm not changing it.
I think he's ascertained.
You're right. You're right. Okay. B is ascertained, so therefore children's ascertained. Is there a condition precedent here, Nancy?
And then
just stays death. But
Yeah. There's no condition precedent here. We have a vested remainder, right? We have a vested remainder, but it's a special kind. It's called a vested remainder subject to open. A vested remainder subject to open. What does that mean? To let in later born children, right? Because B might be alive today, and then they have C, and you have D, and you have E, and all these other kids come into the class. That's fine. You can do that, right? You may not know how many kids A will have in his life. You say, you know what? I know you have B over here. He's a good little boy. And all the other kids you'll have later in life, right? It's subject to open to let in later born kids. Because A can keep having children until his death, plus roughly 9 months. Okay? But the important point here, we have to keep in mind, is if A has no children, it's a contingent remainder. Right? This was, I think, either Dylan or Doug's question a few minutes ago. You look at the time the thing was drafted, right? If the time of the conveyance, if A had no kids, it's a contingent remainder. If A had children, at least one, that's a vested remainder. That's subject to open. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see the angles. I have no peripheral vision that far.
Is it important when the child was born?
What matters is, was the person alive when this document was drafted? That's what matters.
So if A was alive when it was drafted, then they have B until much later?
Contingent. Okay. Right? If the child was born after this document was dated and signed, okay, then it's a contingent remainder. Yes, sir, Blake?
Why does the status of the remainder not change after the...
It's fixed. Right, and I said at the outset of class, a common law, you could not convey a contingent remainder. And one of the reasons why was you have to have a fixed status. Whatever it was at the outset, it remains that status throughout life. You can't change. In other words, Blake's question is, why can't you recharacterize it? This person's born, right? What if that person dies? Do you make it back then to contingent? It's fixed. Right, indeed. What if B is alive when the document's drafted? You call it a vested remainder. And he dies the next day. You don't change it because it's very difficult to keep track of these things. It's fixed at the time of the drafting, right? There's no there's no death registry in medieval England. You don't have these sorts of tools to see who's alive, who's dead. You fix it in place. Yes?
So B and his siblings would have equal interest?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So if he died and he was alive at the time it was drafted, then B's heirs would get it?
Say it one more time, please.
If B died and he was alive at the time it was drafted, therefore had a vested remainder subject to open, then his heirs would get it.
Yeah, and let me just clarify. This should be, it's not optional, not required to say B children and their heirs, right? Okay, so if I had like that, right, from O to A for life, then to A's children, and B was alive at the time the document was drafted, yeah, then B's heirs would get, that's right. Yeah.
Without that language,
It's not, it wouldn't make a difference, right? But just make sure, Dylan's question was, let's say B was alive at the time, right? B was alive at the time the document was drafted, then the heirs of B would get it. Now, Dylan, I'll throw him back at you. What if A has no children and A dies without any children? Where does it go to? That's right. So you can see here how often the relations between contingent remainders and executor interest reversion, they blur. In this case, if A dies childless, it goes back to O reversion. It's always risky, right? You give a condition, maybe if it doesn't happen, you go back to O. I can see your head starting to spin and twirl and churn.
What if O is also dead?
It's heirs. O is heirs.
A's heirs, that's irrelevant to.
But that's not what it says. It's A's children.
Is it specified?
Right, if it was A's heirs, this would be easy, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Right, because a person's heir, I mean, look, let me just, from O to A for life, this is a common exam question style, right? From O to A for life, then to A's heirs.
Yeah.
Cam, what is this? What is this?
That's the regular.
It's a regular life estate, right? Because as soon as A dies, his heirs are ascertained. So it's a vested fixed remainder. There's nothing there, right? There's no condition precedent, and it's ascertained. Questions?
There's only one kind of vested remainder.
Well, there's also the vested remainder subject to open.
So
Right.
vested and then vested subject to. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, you're only going to see vested subject to open where it says children, or sons or daughters or something like that, where it's other people can come into that class. Yes, Marissa.
So the third prong to the vested remainder subject to open would be only specific, the conditions specific to other children.
Don't say third
Or-
prong.
I mean,
Right, but
there's something else if not a
when you have a vested remainder
remainder.
and it's the children, you have to then determine, is it a vested remainder subject to open, right? So you're going to try and flow chart this, right? And you're going to drive yourself insane. I see it every year. People say, Josh, can you look at my outline? I'm like, sure. And like I have the Galaxy S20 coming in a few days. Almost here. This thing is really it's worth $40. It's worth nothing now. So damn cracked. I already appreciate it. But to answer your question, Marissa, you're going to try and flow chart this, right? The flow chart might seem reasonable now. Wait till the next two classes. It gets even worse. So unfortunately, you have to sort of just internalize this process. You say, okay, there's a life estate followed by a future interest, right? That tells me that it's probably a remainder. Is it vested or contingent? Okay, it's vested. Does it involve children? Okay, maybe it's subject to open. Or it's not vested, it's contingent, but maybe it's executor interest. You have to go through all these steps. And there's not like a 1, 2, 3 step I can give you. It's almost like a game of Risk, right? You're jumping around the board everywhere. It's like a terrible board game. I don't like board games. I can't follow the rules. I tried Sellers Catan once. I was so bad. It was like I gave up after 5 minutes. Just forget it. But it's like that. Yes, Chris.
Explain again how the very last one that you typed on there is not, or is a vested when it says to A's heirs
When are A's heirs ascertained?
when he dies.
When does this estate terminate?
When he dies.
That's it. Immediately upon A's death, his heirs are ascertained. So there's no condition precedent. This is almost like a trick question. I've seen this in different books like this. It's a trick question to try and mess you up. But it's basically saying from O to A for life, then to A's heirs. Right? There's nothing fancy about it. Just it's framing it differently. All right. Let's try at the end of your book on page 321. Let's do problem 1. There are a bunch of problems. You might want to think about these after class, but let's at least do maybe 1 or 2 of them. Nick, you want to read? I think you're next, right? Yeah. You want to read question number 1, please?
O conveys to A for life, and in the event of A's death, to B and her heirs. Is B's remainder vested or contingent? Keep going.
Yeah, answer it right there.
Oh, okay. So let's see.
We just did this one, actually.
I'd be vested for B, right?
Okay, why do you say it's vested?
Because B is named, so he's ascertained,
Okay.
and there's no condition precedent.
Okay, good. Notice it's B and her heirs, not B's heirs, B and her heirs. So this is fine. This is a straight up vested remainder. B is ascertained, and there's no condition precedent. It happens naturally upon A's death. Okay? Does O have any interest here, Nick?
No.
Okay, that's right. Again, when there's a vested remainder, O, the grantor, has no interest. That's maybe one rule of thumb you could use, right? When there's a contingent remainder, O is still in the mix. O might get reversion at some point. Hey, Ryan, you want to read for me question number 2, please?
Yes. O conveys to A for life, then to B for life, then to C and her heirs.
Let me just stop you right there. Wait for it, right? I could put 3 or 4 people in these questions, and they get messy. So this is just like a preview of things to come. All right? So to A for life, then to B for life, then to C and her heirs. So let's go one at a time, Ryan. What does A have?
Life estate.
That's right. Okay. What comes after the first life estate?
Then it would be remainder in life estate.
Perfect. I'll come back to you in a second. It's a remainder in life estate. Someone asked me about this earlier. You can have remainder in anything. It can be remainder in fee simple, but here it's remainder in life estate. After A dies, B gets a life estate. But at the present moment, B has a remainder in life estate. Ryan, is that a vested remainder or a contingent remainder?
Vested.
Why?
Because B's named.
Number 1, B is ascertained. What's number 2?
Then there's no condition precedent.
That's it. You got it right. You got it. Which one is it, right? There's no condition precedent. It happens naturally upon the conclusion of A's life, which means his death. Okay? Okay, so Ryan, finish it up. What does C have?
C would be remainder in fee simple.
Okay, is it vested or contingent?
Vested.
Very good. Okay, very good. Thank you. Everyone see that? So A is a life estate. B has a vested remainder in life estate. And C has a vested remainder in fee simple. All right. I want to see that. Let's try number 4. Let's skip 3. Okay, Jay, you want to read number 4, please?
O conveys to A for life, then to A's children who shall reach 21. A's oldest child, B, is 17.
Okay, stop right there. Thank you. All right, so it says O to A for life, then to A's children will reach 21. Now it says children, not child, right? So when you see children, you should at least be on the lookout for maybe we have the vested remainder subject to open. Maybe yes, maybe no. Okay. So from O to A for life, then to A's children who shall reach 21. And we know that at least one child exists, his name is B. Okay, so Jay, what is the future interest for A's children? What, just as a general matter, what do we call that?
Remainder in
Okay, it's remainder, right? So first, okay, remainder in fee simple. We don't know what kind. Do the children have a remainder in fee simple that's vested or contingent?
So are they ascertained?
Well, is at least one child ascertained?
Named, yes.
Okay, good. Is there a condition precedent?
The condition subsequent would be reaching 21, but I don't see a condition precedent.
What has to happen for A's children get Blackacre?
They have to reach 21.
Is that a condition precedent or subsequent? There it is. Everyone see it. A's kids don't get anything until they reach 21. And Jay, what happens if B dies tomorrow at the age of 18? Does he ever get anything?
No, and the other children would have to reach 21 to get.
And what if A then dies childless? None of his kids reach, a mass Wuhan, coronavirus epidemic, and reaches 21. See what's on my mind, right?
Conversion, right?
That's right. Okay, so let me summarize again. There is a condition precedent here. That is, before they get the property, they have to reach 21. Right, before they get the property, they have to reach 21. Because it's a condition precedent, there's a contingent remainder. And generally with a contingent remainder, O is in the mix, right? O might get lucky here, right? Because if O lives long enough, or its heirs live long enough, and the kids don't live to 21, O is reversion. Okay? Now, if A has lots of kids and they all reach the age of 21, they share the gift, right? They have to share Blackacre. But you have to wait to see what happens. Yeah, Dylan. No, it's a contingent remainder, so it's not subject to open, right? Again, you do not have a contingent remainder that's subject to open. Again, if you get lazy and say, oh, children's vested remainder is subject to open, you're wrong. You have to actually go through the steps. Yeah.
With this language, are we to assume that the children, if they reach the age of 21, then they get a fee simple?
Yes, but they share it.
They share the fee simple.
All the kids who are 21 share it at the time of A's death. All right, let's go back to your chart, please, and let me update it with our new things today. So we're just focusing on the life estate row. So the first example I gave you at the outset of class was to A for life, then to B and his heirs. We call that a remainder in fee simple. To be precise, it's a vested remainder in fee simple. Okay, it's a vested remainder in fee simple. Why is it vested? Because B is ascertained, and there's no condition precedent. All right. I'll give you another example. I tell you from O to A for life, then to A's children. And I tell you A has one child. This is what we call a vested remainder, subject to open, in fee simple. Right? Because at least one child is ascertained. Okay, at least one child is ascertained. But there may be more. We're subject to open. Okay. The final example I want to give you is this one. And I know these columns aren't lining up well. I'm going to do the best I can. Sorry, it's on the fly. From O to A for life, then to A's children. Until A has no children. This is what we call a contingent remainder, because A is not ascertained. I'm sorry, A's children are not ascertained. Okay? So we actually did very little new today, right? We basically did these two rows, or these three examples, right? We clarified that the remainder we all knew and loved was actually a vested remainder. That's what we all knew and loved all along. And there's a special type of vested remainder for kids called a vested remainder that's subject to open. And we have the contingent remainder for when it's either unascertained or if there's a condition precedent that exists. Go back and say this table carefully. You're going to try and flow chart, you're going to kill yourself. But it's just, you can do it. Everyone tries it, it never works. Questions? Yeah.
In the
Guys, just hang on 1 second. Yeah.
In the 21 example, let's at A's death, there is one child who's 21 and one child who isn't yet.
Yeah.
Is B's fee simple open?
It's still subject to open. Yeah. I'll be in my office if you want to come talk. But otherwise, have a good day. No class Thursday. I will see you next week.